What is going on? How are y'all doing? Are y'all ready to rock? Can I get a let's go? Let's go, come on! We got all the right people, we got some grub, we're about to make this thing happen. Let's jump into, first of all, let me thank y'all for coming out, okay? You could spend your time resting this evening, but you spent it here with us, and you're investing in your future, your wealth. If you're an experienced investor, continuing to invest because you know the value of networking and getting tried and true data, the latest and greatest data. So thanks for spending your time here today, and let's jump right in here. So I want to first call out the sponsors. So Human Interest there, they are, yes, if you need anything related to HR, 401ks, X, Y, and Z, hit them up right after this. She'll also come up for a brief second later. And for us, the host Commonwealth, we do an affordable housing fund. We offer 14% returns passively. So if you have any investors that want to just not even lift the hammer, not deal with tenants, we do all that. We find the deals and just give you the returns. So that said, let's go ahead and jump into the featured artist portion. But why do we even have an artist, by the way? I mean, I never explained that in the first event last month because I was just moving around so much. But the reason for it is we, as investors, as people who want to be investors, we constantly have to be rejuvenated, invigorated to do the next move. You know, because sometimes you get punched in the face in this business. Let's be real. And you got to get invigorated every chance you get to keep on pushing forward. So that's why we have an artist. I know it's different from every other group, but I want y'all to be inspired and invigorated. And today we have a special artist here today. Let me go ahead and introduce him. Joshua Dallas right here. He started writing poetry at the age of 12. And his first poem ever was actually published in a book by 7th grade. That is early. He's a Christian servant leader, coach, mentor, and financial literacy teacher. Today, he will be sharing and encouraging an original piece called Breakthrough. It's an honor to have him. Join me in welcoming Joshua Dallas.
Thank you for having me. Breakthrough, a sudden, dramatic, and important discovery or development. Achieving success in a particular sphere or activity. Heaven sent progress. Step forward, leap forward, quantum leap. Innovation, revolution, headway, advancement, breakthrough. It's a verb. It's an action word. It occurs when you're believing for something and take action. It's not called believe through. I believe that you can believe for something and just leave your belief at the leaping point of breakthrough. But if you don't leap, you don't leap. If you don't leap, but believe that you can break through, then why you don't leap is a thing that you should break to. Whatever it is that could be keeping you from breakthrough, break it down with the Father and the vision that He gave you. Lay it down. At His altar, He's sufficient, and He's able to transform submission to His will into breakthrough. When you lay it down, you got to lay it down for real. Put it in His hand, show Him you're about His will. Put it in His hand, show Him that it's not an idol. Let Him know that He's your source, and for His purpose you shall live. Put it in His hands. Good gracious alive. These are the type of hands that strongholds can't survive. These are the type of hands that took the mallets and the nails that snatched the keys out of hell can do surgery on the mind. Put it in His hands. And when you do, let go. If any part of it is destined to come back to you, it will for sure. You gotta know that you're doing the right thing. When you put it in the hands of the one true King, you better put it in His hands. I bet you want to know how to put it in His hands. How to get what's in your heart to the one who understands how to transform your wills, your desires, and your plans into good fruit produced by the truth. When He commands a thing to come to pass, it will without question. If you need proof that He will, just look at Esther and Mordecai and see there's more to God than our mortal minds and mortal eyes can see or formalize through our normal lives and fortified beliefs. At least we tried to see it better. Trying to see it better really makes it better. God can see a better way than you and they could ever. Turning down our plates and being earnest when we pray and seeking God to see His face. That's how you really see it better. When you see it better, you got to move like Esther. Move like Esther. Now, what does that really mean? It means see your opportunity to take it to the king. It means take it to him boldly, know your favorite, and just lean on his promises. I promise that he's able, though it seems like it could be risky. Your very life, you could take it. Seems like it could be risky for your family, for the nation. Seems like it could be risky. You know the whole situation. Seems like you got to break your grip and control of the situation. Because haters like hating play hangman with the faithful. Put it in his hands, watch him change the situation. He going to show them folks that his children ain't nothing to play with. Mountains jump in the seas. Queens that came from slaves to the bottom line is Jesus calling you to break through no matter what it takes. He going to make that thing break. You just show him that you're willing and watch how he makes a way. He sees you stepping out on faith. He sees you fasting while you pray. He sees you surrounding yourself with people whose hearts are on the same thing. Just like the paralytic at Capernaum, still teaching us lessons. You got to be with people willing to usher you into his presence no matter what. If you're stuck, they'll keep pressing and pressing and bombard heaven on your behalf until he makes a way out of no way, turning obstacles into options. Crowds and locks couldn't stop them. They went up top with the Father. He gave them strength not to drop them. They got up top and all they seen was tires, seeing that there was no way through. But the bottom line is Jesus calling you to break through. Hallelujah.
What a gift. Let's give that man another hand. Oh my goodness. I got electricity flowing through my body right now. I don't know if y'all do too. So the next section is the sponsor. So, yes indeed. So we would like to start with Stephanie Stevens of Human Interest to say a few words about her company, and then we'll move on to the next one. So Stephanie, let's give her a hand.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Stevens, and I'm with Human Interest. And what we are and what we do is basically we are a 401k wholesaler. We started in 2015, and one of the reasons as to why we like to call ourselves disrupting the retirement industry is because we definitely, our sweet spot, we specialize in small business and making it like really, really affordable for you guys to get like a plan. So, you know, if you know of anybody or if you guys are interested in having a conversation about a 401k plan with us, feel free to stop by my table and we'll set you up with one of our account executives. Stephanie Stevens. Here?
The cups, is that something?
Oh yeah, you guys can take like some little goodies over there that I have right now. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. We all got the hookups with water bottles. Hook it up. Next, we're going to move on to our next speaker, who's also a sponsor, so thanks for being a sponsor also. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the intro for him, and then we could jump into the meat of it. You know, Kenneth has been a friend for like 5 years, and of course it speaks to his humility to serve others first, but I barely know that his career is massive. Like, the only thing I knew about this guy was that he's a commercial lender, but check this out. He has been not only in commercial real estate lending, where his firm Baker Collins & Co. has made almost $2 billion in real estate loans, he's been busy in other ways too. Co-founder at Briscoe Capital Group, an oil distribution company. An oil distribution company? How could you just not mention that? That's like $1 trillion company. But just speaks to his humility. Associate Director at Wharton Gladden Investment Banking Firm, Director at Callum Group Commercial Finance Brokerage. He also has a Master's in Finance in Harvard. He did not mention Harvard either before when we were hanging out. This guy, just so humble. He also has 2 degrees from Georgia Tech and Morehouse, and he recently even spoke at Emory. This guy's a monster. And he's my BFF at the same time. Join me in welcoming Kenneth Igwe. So the first question, can you explain about what your company does?
Sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me, Ivan. It's always a pleasure to have this conversation, especially with folks that known for a good while. Very simply, our company's named Baker Collins & Company. We are a commercial lending group. We're based here in Atlanta. We finance residential as well as commercial real estate projects all over the country, with really a primary focus on the Southeast. On the residential side, we will finance renovation loans, new construction loans, as well as rental properties, otherwise known as landlord loans. On the commercial side, we will finance all four verticals: office, retail, multifamily, as well as industrial. In some very rare cases, we will fund special use properties. We don't do that a lot. And also industrial, hospitality. Again, we don't do that a lot. But there's a guy here that does. When I just said, this is the power of networking. Just meeting folks there as well. And in very rare cases, also, we will inject equity for very opportunistic projects. We work with investors and developers, again, all over the country. We are actually working on putting the equity component for a lot of investors, because a lot of investors have a need for that. And we're putting that together as well. But that's what we do.
Thank you. Could you give us a high level of the current financing market across fix and flip loans, rental loans, and lines of credit?
Sure. So what I tell folks for fix and flip loans, interest rates have gone up. Let's be really honest. They've gone up, and for the most part, that has affected the market. That has affected a lot of investors and their kind of outlook and how they project what things will happen. And when interest rates go up, obviously a lot of things have to change. People have to change their strategy. They have to figure out exactly what direction do I plan on going. We are, admittedly, at our firm, we have seen a little bit of a slowdown with fix and flip lending. In addition to, and the reason for that is because of interest rates. Not just interest rates, but you also have to factor in the supply chain. When interest rates go up, they tend to affect multiple points in the supply chain. Whoever doesn't know what the supply chain is, that's essentially when a raw product essentially is created, manufactured, and delivered to a retail individual. There are multiple points within that supply chain, and each individual point, at some level, is procuring lending. So it just doesn't affect us as real estate investors. It also affects all those other groups. And unfortunately, all those other groups have to pass on those costs, those increased costs to us. So the cost of lumber, the cost of labor, things have gone up. It's going to happen. But I tell folks to keep going. This is just a function of the market. Markets are cyclical. They tend to change every 7 to 10 years. And people will be fine. As it relates to rental loans, now, one of the things that we're seeing for a lot of folks with rental loans, of course, because of interest rates have gone up, to kind of give you an idea as far as how high they've jumped. This time last year, the start rate for interest rates was approximately 3.5%. Now prime rate is 8%. Obviously, that's more than double, right? So if you have an interest rate that definitely doubles, you have to change your strategy. We found that a lot of individuals are essentially taking shorter-term loans for 30-year projects, and they're having what we call shorter terms also. So they know at some point there's a strong possibility that rates could come down. We can't forecast that. We don't know when that's going to happen, but we can essentially say, let's take a shorter loan with the expectation of being able to refinance a shorter loan. So therefore, when interest rates do fall, we'll be able to take advantage of that. And as it relates to lines of credit, lines of credit are a little bit different, right? Lines of credit, it depends on what type of line of credit you're looking for. When we provide a line of credit, it's much different than what most people will think of. When most people think of a line of credit as something that a credit card. You have this unsecured piece of debt that you can go out and buy properties with. How we look at lines of credit is much differently. So our lines of credit there still has to be some type of collateral. So again, interest rates will affect that as well. But we've also found that a lot of really sophisticated, and not even some folks will just figure out ways to use some of the lines of credit they have and then use that as equity to obtain more properties. So you just have to get savvier when rates go up. You have to get comfortable with thinking outside the box. And also I recommend you got to think about collaborations, and I want to definitely chat about that as well.
Okay, thank you. And so going down to specifics about monthly rates. So I noticed it went from like 3 to 5% for a traditional homeowner and a little bit higher. But investors also went kind of in a gradual level too. Like a year ago it was like 6% for an investor. Now it's like 8 to 9%. When I look at that, it looks like egregious from the just surface level. But how does that actually, at a monthly level, change, like on a $100,000 loan? What does that look like?
A couple $100 more a month in a monthly payment. So you have to, if your rates are going up, you have to factor it into your rental rates, right? And it depends on what type of investor are you. Are you an investor who plans on exiting out of this property in 3 years? One of the things that we always ask when someone comes to us, our firm, our account executives, how long do you plan on holding on to this property? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Do you plan on holding on to the day you die? Let's say 30 years. There's no wrong answer, by the way, right? Everyone's going to have a different answer. Investing is a function of your own personal philosophy. No one can tell you if you have a right or wrong answer. It depends on your personal relationship with how you feel about your risk and tolerance and things of that sort. But you have to mind when interest rates do go up, you have to be able to change that. So what we tell a lot of investors, if they have, that's a multi-layered question. If they have debt that is low debt, and someone is trying to come to us to refinance out of that debt, and let's say their rate was 2 or 3%, we always tell them to, hey, don't do that, because you don't want to refinance out of a loan that has a low interest rate into a much higher one. You want to keep that lower interest rate. A low interest rate loan right now is almost an asset. Like there are people who are buying properties assuming that the loan can be sold. It's an asset. Unfortunately, we have to tell a lot of people, hey, I'm going to refinance my investment property. It's like, don't do that. If you haven't, the first thing our clients will always ask, let's stop, let's think through this, because it doesn't make sense. If we refinance you out of this low interest rate loan, and you're in a much higher interest rate loan, you're not going to be our friends, even if you were able to pull some cash out. So you have to be mindful of that. And also, one thing I also want to folks to consider, if you have it depends on the type of renter that you have in that property. The short-term rental universe is one that's not spoken about enough. And what I want people to really understand is when interest rates have gone up, a lot of our investors have converted their properties that they had long-term tenants, they converted them to short-term rentals. And so the short-term rental universe is massive. When I say that, many people think they automatically go to like Airbnb, that's fine because Airbnb is a monster in this space. But you should also consider things like traveling nurses. We've got a lot of clients that will put properties into travel nurses. Obviously, there's a lot of revenue that can generate from there. In addition to, we've got folks that will do something what is called pad split, where you can go in there and you can put more facilities in that particular property that can generate more revenue for your property. So you just got to get creative and rates go up. It's a function of just get creative and start to think outside the box, have conversations, keep coming to meetings like this, because this is where you start to get these ideas that will allow you to kind of, manage through or combat through these higher interest rates.
Yeah, the reason I thought of that question too was, you could be caught up in terror. Like, I don't want to do a deal, but he just said, if you're a $100,000 property, which as a beginner investor, you should be looking around that range, and the difference between that deal is $200, like you might have a different problem there. You might just need to get the price a little lower, but staying away from the deal entirely or deals entirely is just a bad move. Like just staying out of investing, that's just not what you want to do. So just don't let fear control that, but also keep in mind the risk of bigger and bigger loan amounts like 200, 300, 500,000. So where are the recurring patterns in investors not being ready when it comes to financing?
Oh, I can speak about this for a way. A lot of folks have this fear. So one of the things we love to do is we love to teach. What delineates us from other groups is we love talking and sharing with people exactly how to utilize private money. Not to sound crass, but a lender's job is not to teach you how to borrow money. That's not our job. That's not most of us. Our job is to lend you money. If a lender elects to teach you about the lending industry, you should thank that lender, pat him on the back, take him out to lunch or her out to lunch. Do whatever you need to do. We teach. We like people to understand exactly what they're getting themselves into, right? Because this is essentially an investment. And with an investment, you're expecting some type of return. And so we want to make sure that people really understand that. So when you get into these projects, you really have to understand what you're getting themselves into. You can boil down lending. Obviously, there's tons. When you say I'm in lending, there's so many things you can talk about. But there are 4 key factors. Number one, you've got the property. right? The project. The project, the project, the project. Does the project make sense? If we can say yes to that question, and how we would ask that question in two ways. We look at the as-is value. If there's some type of renovation or some type of construction component, we're going to take a look at the future value. If we can say yes to that one question, now we're going to take a look at three other items, such as the borrower's experience. And then we're going to take a look at the borrower's liquidity. How much cash can they show? How much liquidity can they show? What do their cash equivalent accounts look like? Then we're going to look at their credit. So we'll take a look at those things, but when you have those things in place, you should be fine. And this is why you really want to consult with a lender if you are intending to become a real estate investor, or if you want to scale your real estate investing business further, because we have a lot of investors that will use their own cash or use their own 401k, and now they really want to scale this business up. You want to have that conversation with your lender, but you can, again, boil it down to those four factors. A guy can talk all day long about that, but it's four factors. The project, experience, liquidity, and credit. That's what we're going to focus on.
Okay. What is the best way to get a loan past underwriting and cleared close? And could you explain underwriting in detail?
Underwriters, otherwise known as the devils. I'm kidding. Anybody underwriters? I see some of my bankers over here, so I know what you guys are saying. So underwriting really is the process of essentially taking information from a borrower, making sure that everything checks out. You're going to take a look at certain things such as the borrower's liquidity position. You're going to and confirm that this information is true. You're going to take a look at the borrower's credit report. You're going to confirm what they shared with you is accurate. They're going to take a look at, obviously, when the appraisal comes in, because an appraisal more than likely will need to be ordered. Sometimes it may not need to be ordered. They're going to want to make sure that everything is consistent. They typically do not interface with a borrower. They don't interface with an individual. They typically will interface with a loan originator, or they're going to interface with some other member. But you as a retail investor will probably never speak to an underwriter. They're not people. They're not people-pleasing people. There are one. Okay, let me take that back. He's an exception. As you can see, he's out here on the 7 o'clock. Most underwriters will not be out here on the 7 o'clock at night at a networking event. They're going to be home at 5 o'clock, and they work between 9 to 5. He's an exceptional one. But when you put something in front of an underwriter, one thing you can do to kind of expedite the process, send an entire file at one time. If you have a deal and you're trying to get financed and you send piecemeal, guess what that underwriter is going to do? Start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. They're going to keep pushing your deal to the back of the line until you get it prepared. What I recommend that you do is you connect with your originator, you connect with your lender, and you ask them, hey, can you share with me the needs list of the items that we need? And then they will send you a needs list, and then you put it in a nice, pretty Dropbox file or Google file, whichever one you prefer. We don't care what you do. Send it over to us in one clean file. I guarantee you, your underwriters will love you. They will feel as if you're a sophisticated investor, and they will know that when something comes from this individual, they're going to treat it as if this is going to pass through faster. So put your documents in a file, and I'll tell you one thing. If you are a real estate investor, which everyone in here either is intending to become or is one, you should be buying properties in an entity. You should not be buying properties personally. You should be buying properties corporately. So everybody here, even if you don't have a property, if you don't have a property at this moment, there's some homework. Get an entity. Set up an entity. Whether it's an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, and with that entity, get in an EIN letter, and go talk to an accountant, go talk to an attorney, set that up immediately, so now you're ahead of the game, and have those items ready for when you are planning to do it, because you want to prepare, you want to get into the space sooner than later, but get that set up, have a conversation with the entity. Georgia is a very business-friendly state compared to other states. We lend nationally. And it's easy to set up an entity here in Georgia. You literally pay $100, wait 2 weeks, you've got a company. And so those are some things that you can start the process of being able to do that.
Yeah, make sure the company name is professional. Better not see Sweet Little Angel LLC in one of y'all's companies.
You got something? Just because of that. So one of the funniest companies I've This is like 4 years ago, and we were financing a project for this one gentleman. The name of this company was SMART, and it was an acronym. So it's S.M.A.R.T. And I just, I'm inquisitive. I had to ask him today, hey dude, what does SMART mean? I know what the word SMART means. What does that name mean? And initially, he didn't want to answer my question. He was kind of beating around the bush. I was like, I really have to know what that means. You set it up as an acronym. I'm going to ask. I know I'm not the first person to ask that. And so he responded to me. He's like, okay, Kenneth. Essentially means some men are really trying. I was like, that is insane. Are really trying. Some men are really trying. SMART. That was the name of his entity.
Okay. It's an interesting guy. What is the consistent pattern for investors that make it past 1 million in net revenues?
Consistency. They focus on one or two products. They don't jump everywhere. They're not infatuated with the shiny new object. It's very easy to be infatuated and one day you're doing fix and flips, another day you're doing wholesaling. If you're just consistent and you really understand your market. So our most successful investors, they keep it very simple. Hey, look, I'm going to do fix and flips. I know exactly how many fix and flips I'm going to do. And I'm going to set up a plan, and I'm going to get to this number. Then they jump into, let's say, rental properties. And the folks who keep jumping or oscillating between multiple asset types are the ones who never understand all the nuances of one asset type. So it's like now you have to go and learn a completely different asset type to understand the last one. And you never were really an expert in the first one. So to get to that $1 million level, depending on if you're looking to run in revenue, I would recommend rental properties or multifamily. We finance a ton of multifamily properties. And multifamily, and how I define multifamily is a little different than most. I define multifamily by 5+ units or more. Some people, and I define multi-unit as 2 to 4. The reason why I make that distinction is because multi-unit, that's essentially residential financing. Multifamily is commercial financing, complete role. Very different, right? Multifamily, we focus more so on income. Multi-unit, we really focus on comparable sales. But being able to consistently acquire assets in a very efficient manner and methodical manner allows for folks to do it. And also, the folks that are able to partner up or collaborate with other investors. You should not, real estate is a team sport. It is a contact sport. To me, real estate is, yes, you've got sticks and bricks and all that stuff. But for the most part, you can boil down real estate investing to 3 things. People, it's a people business. You have to come to events like this. You have to keep connecting. Number 2, it's a risk management business, right? When you get into these deals, you have to be able to mitigate or manage the risk that you get into as well. And then number 3, it's a capital business. Because you're going to need capital, whether it's your capital or whether it's someone else's capital. Now, people will see real estate as sticks and bricks. You've got nice, pretty, Class A office buildings in one of the nicest neighborhoods in the state of Georgia. But ultimately, these buildings, the ones that we're in, were a function of those 3 items: people, capital, and risk management.
I like that you mentioned risk management. A few years ago, I remember seeing a husband and a wife in a property, and I was doing a quick little inspection of it as part of my process. And I remember very clearly the husband was like, these previous tenants left like soda sprayed all over the ceilings and all this. And he was just complaining for like 5 hours. I'm exaggerating, of course, but like risk management, risk tolerance, that's something you got to think about, right? You never want to deal with tenants with a spray bottle hitting a ceiling and just throw your day off. So that's something to just think about too. Would you prefer fix and flips in that case? How much, like let's say I got a crazy deal, like $100,000 duplex in Manhattan. How much does credit how much does credit really factor into a juicy deal, bro?
If you find a $100,000 deal in Manhattan, you call me immediately. I'll be on the first plane. I'll be on the red eye. So it depends. If it is a fix and flip deal, so one of the biggest differences between a commercial lender like what we do and a conventional lender, they tend to focus residential. I'm speaking specifically residential, not commercial, not commercial real estate, residential conventional lender. And when I use the word commercial lender, think of commercial as being a business purpose loan. We only work with investors. So you can put a commercial loan on a residential property, right? It's for the sole purpose of doing that. Credit is technically it's one of the last things we tend to look at. We really focus on the deal. We focus on, if the deal does not make sense, we're not moving forward. If the deal makes sense, now we can make it work to a degree, depending on how savvy that borrower is. If that person has challenged credit, I never say the word bad credit, because I never say that word, because credit is really just a temporary snapshot of where you're currently at. Someone who has bad credit today, has challenged credit today, may have great credit next year. And I think sometimes we need to change some of the verbiage that we use to assign for certain things, because when someone hears bad credit, they think of a bad person, which is not the case. But if you do find a really attractive deal, and you do not have the capital for it, you can go out and partner with someone who does have it. The beautiful thing about this city, there are events and there are people that need to deploy their capital in some form or fashion. Your job as a real estate investor, whether you have no money or not, is to go find those people to partner up with. There is no objection that you can give to me that tells me if you want to get into real estate investing. Not one. I hear it every day. We financed almost 2,000 clients in the last 8 years. Everyone has a story. And investors are ambitious people. And you're going to try to figure it out, right? Ask somebody. Call somebody. Google a company. Go on Facebook. Go on Instagram. If you really want it, you'll get it. Credit should not be something that stops you or prevents you from real estate investing, because I can tell you hundreds of folks who have essentially not allowed that to affect them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it makes me think of a family member I partnered with. They had the credit, and in that case, I was not in a great credit position years ago. And we partnered up. They had a primary residence they could live in for free, and I got the other units, revenues. So you could make it work. Let me see. Could you please explain non-recourse loans and the risks associated with them for lenders?
So, a non-recourse loan, to keep it simple, recourse essentially means responsibility, right? Typically, residential loans, they are recourse loans, meaning that if there is default, we look at every single deal through the eyes of a foreclosure. Unfortunately, this business has made me a skeptic of everything. I'm sorry. It just has. I hear everything. So I just have to be a tad skeptical of everything that comes my way. However, with a non-recourse loan, that essentially says that you are not personally responsible for this particular property. Those are typically given for larger projects, typically in commercial real estate projects. For residential loans, there's only one lender that I know that will do a non-recourse loan, and they have suspended lending because they cannot sell their debt. As lenders, here's how lending works. Let me give you guys a very simple way. We originate loans, essentially we start the loan, we sell the loan. Start it, sell it, start it, sell it, start it, sell it. We have to be able to find people to buy our debt. If you can't find somebody to buy that debt, now you hold that loan. Essentially, you don't want to do that as a lender, because there's this thing called the velocity of capital. Money has to keep moving. Think of money like Usain Bolt. It has to keep moving, right? It cannot stop. This country, essentially, one man's debt is another man's equity, right? One man's debt is another man's asset. And so it just can't stop. And so when you have these things in place, you have to understand it has to keep moving and it has to keep making certain. So with non-recourse loans, that essentially says, hey, look, if I default on this property, unless there was no fraud attached to this particular deal, that particular banker, that particular lender can't come after me personally. With a recourse loan, there is a possibility that if there is a default, that lender could come after you personally. And here's how that would work. If a property is foreclosed, right, and this is a recourse loan, and this is where most residential loans kind of fall under. If a property is foreclosed and the property is, let's say, at the foreclosure steps, the bank is only able to recoup $100,000, but the property is worth $105,000. Now there's going to be a deficiency. We call it a deficiency judgment, right? That deficiency judgment is something that a bank technically could come after you for, because it is a recourse loan. In a similar scenario, for a non-recourse loan, if that $5,000 difference, that bank is probably not going to do that because you essentially signed it up. Now, non-recourse loans are really meant for like the big, you really don't get in the commercial world 3 million plus, 2 million plus loans. Many times residential lenders are probably going to say no, and it benefits them because buying properties of 3 million plus, 4 million plus, those can get very complicated, and there are many members within that entity. For example, this property was probably purchased through some type of non-recourse debt. I never say the word guarantee, I'm a banker, right? There's a strong possibility, I'm almost 99.9% certain that this property was bought through some type of non-recourse debt. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure, go ahead, follow-up question.
So in that case, so they're basically, they're entities that have defaulted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, but then they can go buy another property. How come so it's not on the record or whatever, or they have a new LLC?
Yeah, there's so many, look, ask that question one more time.
Well, I'm thinking, because I'm from Manhattan, and it's just fascinating, restaurants constantly close, and they haven't gone through their full lease, but then they'll open another restaurant somewhere else, and it's just, how does that work that they defaulted, but then they're opening another way?
They set up new entities?
Is that new entity?
Yeah, they have set up a new entity.
But the background checks are still done on the individual as well.
Yeah, and so it also depends on how they acquire that financing as well. So each lender has different metrics as to how they lend. There's different underwriting protocol that's utilized. So if one lender will say, hey, look, I'm going to overlook this item, if they even pull credit to begin with, or to do a background check. To find a deficiency judgment, you don't really find that. You can find that on a credit report. There are times you can find it in a credit report, and you'll almost always find that on a background check report. Some lenders will not pull a background check report. They'll just pull a credit report. Right? Now, if they pull a LexisNexis report, you're in trouble. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the word LexisNexis. They know everything about you. They know who you dated at 16. They know where you worked at 19. They know where you lived at 22. They know how many credit cards you currently have. They know everything about you. If they pull a LexisNexis report, they probably found that information.
We'll have more time for Q&A here in a minute. We just have a few more questions to go. In regards to the economy, how do you feel investors should prepare for what industry experts are calling a rocky path for the year ahead?
Very good question. So this is the one that I get a lot. The market is definitely changing. The market but it's cyclical. It will happen. It will keep changing. It depends on what I see where interest rates are going to go. The Fed is going to meet sometime soon. More than likely, there's one of three things that can happen when the Fed meets. Either they're going to raise interest rates, they're going to keep them flat, or they're going to lower interest rates. More than likely, they're not going to lower interest rates. So what I believe, and this is anecdotal, this is my opinion, I believe they're either going to keep interest rates flat, or they're going to, they potentially could raise them. I don't necessarily think that they're going to raise them this time again. This is anecdotal. This is just my opinion. The Fed, our great friend Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Fed, they have mandated that they want to get inflation to 2%. All right? They want inflation to be at 2%. This time around last year, inflation was somewhere around 10%. Great thing, and whenever you want to reduce inflation, because obviously inflation is the cost of goods and services, it's not the cost of goods and services, it's how goods and services are affected through that as well, right? By doing that, they have been able to reduce inflation. Right now, I think the numbers came out today around 4.98%. So it is kind of working. When you raise interest rates, there's a strong possibility they want to reduce inflation. I'm saying all that to say the cost of goods and services have been going up. But what a lot of people need to understand is that you got to keep investing as a real estate investor. You cannot stop. You just have to change the way in which you look at these type of scenarios. If you were to stop, even if rates go up, because to me, people will say the rates are really high. Who's over 50 here, by the way? This is, for the folks that are under 50, these rates aren't that uncommon, historically speaking. Is that fair to say, right? So when people say when people are freaking out about 8%, the people that are really freaking out are the ones who've never really gone through multiple market cycles, who have never really seen what exactly has happened. So we're going to be fine, but you just have to change your strategy. You have to understand that you're in a different cycle. But again, I don't necessarily see rates coming down, but I do think that the market is still going to be strong. Luckily, we live in a city like Atlanta. There's so many things that are affecting it that allow for Atlanta to keep growing. You've got multiple sports teams, you've got diversity of economies, you've got diversity of businesses, you've got a lot of professionals that are moving here. For the city of Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, I think will be fine. That's my opinion. Nationally speaking, I think it'll be okay as well. I don't necessarily foresee. I'm not one of those doom and gloom type of folks. And I think when people start to, they will say these things, it's people generate a lot of money speaking doom and gloom. Sensationalism sells. Don't buy into all of it.
Amen to that, man. Warren Buffett just said that too. If I spend my time speculating, I wouldn't make any money. He just focuses on buying good businesses. So that's what we got to do too, buying good investments. So I was at a Grant Cardone event last year. He said some big bank lender denied him on a loan for a 500-unit complex. I mean, he still ended up getting a loan with somebody else, but the lender that declined him ended up declining because he was too much of a show-off on his social media. So how do you toe the line between flair and professionalism on your social media to avoid that?
So I know I have clients that work with Grant Cardone personally, and yeah, he's a different person offline, right? And I understand he's doing that because he's selling himself, he's selling his business, he's selling his service, he's selling a lifestyle. We get it. In banking, in high-level banking, specifically institutional banking, there's these two words that they're really concerned about. It's called headline risk. Who's ever heard of a show called American Greed on CNBC? I love that show. I've been watching that show since 2008. I remember the first episode. I actually personally know 3 people on that show. God forbid, if you've been in banking for as long as I have, you're gonna know somebody. It is what it is. But headline risk is essentially banks do not want to be attached to someone who may have a serious fall from grace and may affect the bank's status in this market. If consumers start to lose confidence in a bank, what do you think is going to start to happen? Now, granted, a 500-unit property is that's probably a $100 million property, right? That's a fairly decent-sized loan for that institution. That institution probably had assets under management somewhere in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But Grant Cardone is such a popular figure, that if he were to do something and they attach it to this individual, that headline risk, they do not want that. And they will turn that business away because they would say, hey, look, we're going to deploy this capital in some other form and we'll send it to some other person, but we don't want that headline risk. Banks do not want to see that. It doesn't. Consumer confidence. If consumers aren't confident in the bank, they're not going to make those deposits. And this is where banks are able to generate revenue because they can trade on that money forever, however they want to trade on it.
Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind for balance. Lastly, how can people reach you?
I've been pretty good on LinkedIn this year. I'm not really on Facebook. I don't really understand Instagram. I think somebody told me this thing called Top Tick. I know it's TikTok. But yeah, LinkedIn. Send me a LinkedIn message. You can give us our office a call. Our marketing team does a pretty good job as far as making people are able to reach us as well. And I've got some cards. You guys can get them as well. Love having this conversation with you guys also.
Yeah, give him a hand, man. That was amazing. So that's pretty much for the speaking portion. I encourage every one of y'all to go ahead and network because that's the way you could make some serious cash is by networking and helping each other out. You know, try to get clarity on what your next move is, so you can speak to that other person what you could get help with, or you could help them with. So let's get to it, guys. Thanks, y'all.